Good morning. There we are. Good morning and welcome. I am your gathering companion this morning. My name is Cindy Christensen. About a year and a half ago, my husband and I were searching for a place of community that offered spiritual freedom, and we found it. Welcome to Southminster Steinhauer United Church, or Spiritual Seekers United in Community. Welcome to a place of spiritual exploration. Welcome to a community of diversity. Welcome to this circle where we're invited to open ourselves to compassion and depth, knowing that we're each important, we're each valued, and we're each able to be and live and make a difference in our world. No matter who we are welcome and safe to explore honestly here. Welcome to this place. This morning, as we light our candle, may it remind us that there isn't one way to be light, but many. We're all unique expressions of one humanity, one earth, and one community. And may we affirm that it isn't our beliefs or our ideologies that define us. It isn't a teaching about the right way or the wrong way to be who you are. What defines us is our willingness to be community with one another in our similarities and differences. May we recognize our importance to light our corner of our lives, to let our light shine for ourselves and others.
We offer welcome to those of us gathered here in person in Edmonton, to those of us part of SSUC Saskatoon, joining us from the lounge at St. Andrew's College in Saskatoon. Welcome to all of you. And as we recognize the land today, we do so recognizing that Treaty 6 territory spans and connects both of our communities. As our acknowledgement today, I want to introduce you, or perhaps reintroduce you, to Kent Monkman, who is a Canadian First Nations artist and member of Fish River Band. According to his website, he is known for provocative interventions into Western European and American art history, which is to say that he redefines, asks new questions of our history. He works with themes like loss, colonization, resilience, and sexuality. His gender-fluid alter ego is a supernatural, shape-shifting figure called Miss Chief Eagle Testicle. And she is a frequent figure in his work. You can see her in this one as well. When interviewed by the Toronto Star, he spoke about his Toronto exhibit, Shame and Prejudice, A Story of Resilience, a 9-part work that challenges art's representation of the past. He says this: history is a narrative. It's a collection of stories sanctioned by the ruling power and reinforced through words and images that suit them. That was the whole point of taking on, he says, history painting, to authorize these moments that have been swept under the rug for generations. So our acknowledgement of the land for us at SSUC Edmonton and Saskatoon as Treaty 6 territory is, yes, an act of reconciliation. But it's also an active defiance of the dominant story. The dominant culture of how the land is viewed as commodity, of how history is told by the colonizer, of how a thing, the land, is not a thing to be owned as resource. Our time, each and every week, of acknowledging the land is an act that stands against the colonial mindset with images and understandings that suit the dominant culture alone. So to acknowledge this land, to call this our home, as we're learning from our Indigenous teachers, is to call the land, the earth, our partner, our life giver, our teacher, our healer, and all that have collective right to access that land and all that it gives us. May we ever be grateful.
Spirits from thoughts of getting there. We move our spirits, toward the gift of being here. Toward the gift of being
Time for all ages. Lately means story time. Hi. Welcome. Welcome to the carpet. Welcome to stay where you are, however you'd like to participate. Okay. We've been reading a story. It's called The Quilt Maker's Gift. It's by Jeff Brumbo and illustrated by Gail DeMarkin. And it's taken us a while to read this story. Yes. This is week number 3. Yeah. Now, okay, here we go. Now, I'm not just going to pick right up where we left off, because just in case you weren't here last week or the week before, you might need a little refresher. This book is about a woman, a quilt maker, who makes lovely quilts. But does anyone remember who she makes these quilts for? Yes, everyone, but they have to be a certain everyone. Can they be greedy? No, they have to be grateful. Can they have a ton of other things and lots of other blankets? No, they have to need them. Okay, so that's one character in the story. Do you happen to remember another character in the story? Yes, an evil king. Goodness me. Hello, Tether. Oh, there, I've got it now. An evil king. Will you help me? Great. Sure. Excellent. So we've got an evil king who, what does he want? Oh, he wants everything, but he really wants one thing. What does he want? He wants a quilt made by the quilt maker. Will she give it to him? No, she won't, because he has everything. He has everything. And so, no, she does not want to give it to him unless what? He has to go into his castle that is filled with all kinds of stuff, and he has to give it away to people. And if he does that, then she will give him a quilt. Thank you. That would be really great. I don't know if this is working very well. Now, the king didn't like the idea of giving everything away, and he got quite angry. Yes, not quite yet. So he got very angry. He did some mean things, like put her in a cave with a bear and put her on an island where she had nowhere to stand or sleep. But she made friends with bears and birds, and they helped her. So now, where we left off was on this page. Yeah. Oh, sorry, I did it. You can do the next one. We left off on this page where the king may have been thinking, okay, maybe I need to think about giving some things away. If I must, I will give away my treasures. And that's where we left off. So that is where we're going to start. Tyler, yes. Did it work?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Ready? The king went to his castle and searched from top to bottom for something he could bear to give away. Frowning, he finally came out with a single marble. But the boy who received it, he gave it away, smiled so brightly that the king went back for more things. Eventually, he brought out a pile of velvet coats and went about the town, giving them to people dressed only in rags. All were so pleased that they marched up and down the street in a grand parade with their new clothes. Yeah, look at that. Still, the king did not smile.
I pressed it.
Thank you. It is really great to have a helper.
Yeah.
Here, I'm going to put that on your side. Great.
Can I hold it?
Yes, you may. Next, the king fetched 100 waltzing blue Siamese cats
Where do we still for this or no?
and the dozen fish that were clear as glass. Next page. Then the king ordered his merry-go-round with the real horses to be brought out. Children cried with delight and cartwheeled around him, and just the smallest of smiles began to show on the king's face. How do you do the smallest of smiles? The king looked about him and saw the dancing and merrymaking and all the happiness that his gifts had brought. A child took hold of his hand and pulled him into the dance. Now the king really smiled and even laughed out loud once. Meanwhile, the quilt maker kept her word and started making a special quilt for the king. With each gift that he gave, she added another piece to his quilt. Yes, good.
Wait, it didn't.
Here, let's let someone else have a turn. Can you press this big button right here? Press it once. Thank you. Very good.
Oh, wait, one more page.
Sure, of course. We've started something.
You put to turn it, bro.
Did I turn the page?
No.
Oh, that's what you're reminding me. Thank you, Tyler. Oh, yes. You'd think I was new to this. So, the king kept on giving and giving. When at last there was no one left in town who had not received something, the king decided to go out into the world and find others who might be in need of his gifts. But before he left, the king promised the quilt maker he would send a sparrow back to her each and every time he gave something away. Morning, noon, and night, the wagons rolled out of town, each piled high with the king's wonderful things. And for years and years, messenger sparrows flew to the quilt maker's windowsill as the king slowly emptied his wagons, trading his treasures for smiles around the world. Did you hear how long it takes him to get rid of all of his stuff? Years and years?
Oh, Yeah.
Yeah, there's a picture just of him going all over the land and giving away his treasures.
I think I've lost my track.
That's okay. Okay, there we go. And are we on the next one now? Where are we, everyone? Here we go. That doesn't look right to me.
Yeah, that doesn't look right.
My technology is not cooperating today. Well, you know what? The people in the booth are going to move this slide for me. Okay. On and on the quilt maker worked, and piece by piece the king's quilt grew more and more beautiful. Finally, one day, a weary sparrow flew into her window and perched on her needle.
Can I
Perched on her needle.
keep on helping you?
Not just yet. She knew then and there that it was the last messenger. So she put a final stitch in the quilt and started down the mountain in search of the king. Okay. After a long search, she finally found him. The king's royal clothes were now in tatters and rags. His toes poked out of his boots, yet his eyes glittered with joy, and his laugh was wonderful and thunderous. Thank you. The quilt maker unfolded the king's quilt from her bag. It was so beautiful that hummingbirds and butterflies fluttered around. Standing on tiptoe, she tenderly wrapped it around him. Just on your, down on your bum so people can see. Perfect. What's this? Cried the king. As I promised you long ago, the woman said, when the day came that you yourself
It couldn't connect.
had given everything away, when you could be grateful for what little you had, then I would give you a quilt. Well, the king's great sunny laugh made green apples fall and flowers turn his way. But I'm not poor, he said. I may look poor, but in truth my heart is so full, it's bursting. It's filled with memories of all the happiness I've given and received. I'm the richest man I know. Nevertheless, the quilt maker said, I made this quilt just for you.
So then.
You're right, it's not working. That's okay. Thank you, replied the king. I'll take it, but only if you'll accept a gift from me. Now, can you see how big this quilt is? Oh my gosh. I'm not sure how she got that in her bag. Well, we know that she has special gifts. There is one last treasure I have left to give away. Look how big the quilt is, see? It's so big. All these years I've saved it just for you, and from his rickety, rundown wagon, the king brought out his throne. It's really quite comfortable, the king said, and just the thing for long days of sewing. From that day on, the king often came to the quilt maker's house in the clouds. By day, the quilt maker sewed the beautiful quilts she would not sell. And at night, the king took them down to the town. And there he searched out the poor and the downhearted. He was never happier than when he was giving something away. That's the end. Ah, we did it. We did it. Oh my gosh. Now, I want to say one more thing about this book. I do want you, if you can find this at the library or ask your grown-ups about it, it's really fun, because what you may not have known is that all the way through this book, there are things to hunt and seek and find. We didn't do that here, but that's something fun to do at home. So, I want us to remember that this story is so wonderful, and we wanted to come back and hear it because we wanted to know if that king could give his things away. It is very hard to think about all of the things we have and the people who might be happy to have even one thing. And it's lovely to think of trading treasures for smiles.
Plus it's 20, 10.
Treasures for smiles. So even if it's not something big, even if it's your time, Even if it's something very small, I wonder how we might trade and make someone smile.
So did we finish the book?
We finished it. We did it. Better late than never. You know what? The book will be here. Come and find it after, okay? All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for working 3 weeks with us to tell this good story.
10:22.
Okay, thank you. You're invited to Kids Spirit? No, it's all fine. Did you like that book? Did you like it? Did you like it? Thank you.
Bring you back to the thick of young parenting.
Oh, yeah. Just a few moments for some invitations for us as we move through the week and discuss all the opportunities before us as a community. If you've got something, please come forward for a brief announcement. Want to remind us all that Forest Friend continues. This is a once-a-month gathering of allies and queer folks in a safe place outside to explore, to be in community. Today, a campfire and a new location. If you want some gentle community, some gentle outdoor nature time, between 1 and 3 this afternoon. And also a reminder that our Zatoun products are still for sale. This is fair trade products supporting Palestinian farmers, and Sheila will be in the foyer this morning selling those if you'd like to take a look. And today you're invited to stay after, whether you're here in person or online. Stay on the live stream or stay in person for some coffee, tea, and bannock as we learn more about a United Church of Canada process and remit to establish an autonomous Indigenous organization. So we'll learn more about that together after the gathering.
It's on. Okay. Hello, I'm Bernie Harding from Congregational Care. I just, if you're like me, when you get your morning messenger, you may just skim through to a couple of things that are important to you, but there's a couple of things I'd like to bring your attention to from Congregational Care. The first is our comfort food, which we have found that hasn't been working quite well enough, but Maureen Andre is hoping to get people who are willing to make meals sort of not necessarily at a moment's notice, but in a couple of days' notice, to get out to people who we have found do need food. The other thing, if you know somebody who you feel it'd be good if we gave a casserole or some soup to, let us know. And Maureen's email address is in the Morning Messenger. The other one is transportation. As it gets to be winter, people may not want to drive as much. So what we've got, and I've got the sign-up sheet in the foyer, is if you're willing to drive somebody to church, sign up and leave your name, phone number, and your neighborhood that you live in. And if you need a ride on a fairly consistent basis, sign up. On the other hand, there's two sides. I need a ride, I can give a ride. And hopefully people would connect with each other. And if we can just make it easier for people who are having difficulty getting to church to get here. Okay? So these are out in the foyer with a wonderful little red bug on them. Okay, bye-bye. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Bill Hibbard from the Finance Committee. We're in the midst of our annual stewardship campaign, talking about the things that Southminster has done this past year and would like to do for next year. For that, we need volunteers, and we need you people to donate money for us. So thank you all for the things that you've done this year and the monies you have given to Southminster. We show ways that donations can be made on the screen each Sunday. You see them up there. I just want to tell you about another possible way. My wife and I have recently made a donation to Southminster by way of donating shares of equities that we have purchased in the past. Some have done well, some not so well. We donated shares of companies that have resulted in pretty good capital gains for us to the United Church Foundation. We'll get a charitable donation receipt from the United Church Foundation for the full market value of those shares on the date that they received them. And because we donated the shares, we don't have to include the capital gain that we got on that in our taxable income. The United Church Foundation charges a small amount to cover their costs for completing the transaction, and will then disperse the balance to whichever charity we designate. And in this case, we have chosen SSUC. It seems like a win-win all around. So if anybody would like more information about how to do that, and it's very quick and easy, just talk to me. Thank you.
Hi, May Kellerman, and I'm talking on behalf of the nominating committee, which is a little defunct at the moment, of the board. I have an extraordinary opportunity for somebody who really likes to be organized and who likes to keep people under control, which is so many of us. Your board needs a secretary, and this is a commitment of a meeting about 9 times a year, maybe more, but around about 9 times a year, a couple of hours of preparation, a couple of hours of the board meeting, that once a month event, and then taking the minutes and distributing those minutes. I will be out in the foyer after. Please don't all rush at once. But if this is in your wheelhouse, and I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I also know that there's some people who love doing this kind of thing. So please, storm me in the foyer at the end of our gathering today. Thank you.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high, and
Heidi. That was beautiful. Our reading today, The Task, Eugene Goulavec, a 20th century French poet. When each day is sacred, when each hour is sacred, when each instant is sacred, earth and you, space and you, bearing the sacred through time, you'll reach the fields of light and recognize you're standing in them. These are the words of a 20th century French poet. May we find wisdom for our living.
Throughout the course of November, we've been hearing from various folks within our community about what they've been pondering around what SSUC gives to them and how they're able to respond to that in some way and ponder the ways that they give their time or their energy or their talent. And I've been so grateful to each and every one that's shared so far. And this week, we have the opportunity to hear from two folks, the first of which, Debbie Gunther Hansen, comes to us from SSUC Saskatoon and has thought about this for a couple of weeks and prepared for us a little video where she'll share some of her thoughts. So here is Debbie.
Good morning. I'm Debbie Gunther Hansen from SSUC Saskatoon. My husband Cliff and I were members of Meewasin Valley United Church for many years. At the time we sold our church building, our congregation split and went in various directions. We were all grieving. But a small but mighty group of us were looking for a way to continue to move along our expansive spiritual journey and meet a new community of like-thinking individuals to share that with. By some miracle, we found SSUC Edmonton. Along with Nancy and Chris, you all welcomed us with open arms. We felt not only loved, but that we belonged. We are so extremely grateful. We are so fortunate, especially, to be able to share the live stream each week. I love the Time for All Ages. It gives me great ideas for books for our grandkids. SSUC Saskatoon meets formally at St. Andrew's College on campus once a month. We discuss and view the live stream and share our lunch together. We've become a very close community. We have book studies, assist with events in the community involving social justice. We have spirit walks, provide monthly volunteers to the Riverbend Integrated Community Ministries to assist in preparing hot meals and a place to sit and eat together with the inner city folks. We have had several volunteer on the ICM board as well, and several still there. Social justice moves us. We, especially in Saskatoon, need to thank Tricia, who is always there to look after details and keep us informed. She also volunteers to sit on the SSUC Edmonton board on our behalf. Music is such a vital part of my life, and wow, do we have an amazing music team. Do you realize how lucky we are? We have volunteer songwriters, composers, arrangers, musicians, choirs and choir directors, and soloists, all in our midst. They volunteer so much time and talent and spirituality. It is a concert every week. Maybe we should consider that when giving our financial support. At home, Being part of Nefesh Spirit nourishes me in so many ways. Friendship, support, love, and of course the harmony we share together. We love to share a contemplative music as a spiritual gift. Most recently, we've been singing as a group with the Threshold Singers. We sing at the bedside of seriously ill or dying individuals to bring calm and comfort to them and their families. A truly amazing experience. Thank you again for all your ongoing support, love, and inspiration. Let's keep moving forward together.
And speaking of Nefesh Spirit, what would Debbie speaking without us hearing from the group in a recording they made 2 years ago?
Live deeply in this moment. Find the stillness deep inside. Enter the quiet, the calm inner space, and peacefully drift, peacefully drift, peacefully drift beyond. Live deeply in this moment. Find the stillness deep inside. Enter the quiet, the calm inner space, and peacefully drift, peacefully drift, peacefully drift beyond. Live deeply in this moment. Find the stillness deep inside. Enter the quiet, the calm inner space, and peacefully drift, peacefully drift, peacefully drift beyond. Live deeply in this moment. Find the stillness deep inside. Enter the quiet, the calm inner space, and peacefully drift, peacefully drift, peacefully drift beyond.
So many of us know that life is found in the midst of storytelling, and is in such an important piece of life. And whether it's telling stories to children or grandchildren, or hearing them in the midst of many forms, on podcasts, on radio and television, in series and movies, we are about storytelling. And I thought I'd take us back. Even further back in our childhood experience to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. We say wisdom comes from many sources. We mean it, right? I particularly like this picture of Goldilocks tasting the porridge that was too hot. So remember the story. Goldilocks enters a snug little house and finds three of many things, the first of which is 3 bowls of porridge. Goldilocks was hungry, so she tasted the porridge from the first bowl. This porridge is too hot. She tastes the second bowl. This porridge is too cold. She tastes the third. Ah, this porridge is just right. And so she happily eats it all up. The story continues about her doing this again and again, and then the bears come home and find her sleeping in the bed that's just right. However, there is a plethora of meanings to take from these old fairy tales, but I'm amazed that this story, first and foremost, examines the human propensity to search for what is right, just right. It also talks to us about our search for balance, that more often than not we're out of balance. Our food is too hot or too cold, too spicy, too bland. Our clothes are too tight or too loose. Our house is either too big or too small. And when it comes to time, we're no different. We tend to be either too early or too late, in a mad rush or just waiting around, too busy or too bored. When was the last time you heard someone say, or you said yourself, I have just the right amount of time? The wisdom of the Judeo-Christian tradition spends a lot of energy on the balance of time. Talk of Sabbath days to encourage rest every seventh day. Putting aside time to rest in the middle of our scheduled lives that helps to maintain a rhythm, perhaps to put us in touch with a rhythm and a hum of creation, growth and blooming, followed by withdrawal and conservation and hibernation. We see it play out outside every year. And in that simple and ancient tradition of Sabbath is erected a weekly bastion against the commodification of time. That there is a cycle to it. That there is a just right sense to it. That time means more than just a means to earn money. It's more than what we can get out, squeeze out of each day. It's a message to us in this ancient ritual and practice of Sabbath keeping, which takes many forms. As the Christian tradition grew from the Hebrew tradition, it became, rather than a Sabbath, but rather a holy day on a Sunday. That there was this little mini resurrection every week. That there was this little time to break and say, a day. It's this practice against leaving no time, about leaving time for beauty and rest and relationships, or all those things that can't be purchased. This long-held tradition of rest and Sabbath, rhythm and balance that you find in many traditions is a defense against the hurry, the clock watching, the tick, 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 tick that desecrates the real richness of time. It's said that all we talk about, maybe in this community, maybe in many communities, maybe in whole traditions as a whole, maybe in every religious and spiritual tradition, comes down to how we love. And there's truth to that. When we are poor keepers of time, we are failing in our loving as well. Other people are affected by our use of time, by our hurry and our procrastination. When businesses speak to their employees about guarding against theft and fraud, they don't just talk about, when you take the odd package of Staples home or a pen that you take from the office. They're talking about also the theft of time. We've commodified it so much that now we can steal it from each other. The Goldilocks balance between work and rest involves love at every turn. If you are a farmer, you show love by caring for your land and your animals as if they're your family. You want no harm to come to them. You want health and wholeness. If you're in business, you show love by the way you treat those who you work with and who work for you. If you're a nurse, you show love by caring for each patient as if every one of them is your parent or your child. If your work is the time that you spend with the work of your hands or your volunteer hours, you do it in a spirit of love in the way that you give yourself to others. Whatever we do, our time, our work, is our love in the world. And so, yes, everything is about love. If we want to embody love, then how we spend our time and what we do with it is a very, very important reflection of our love in the world. This is all to say that there will always be demands on our time. And the ancient and future wisdom that speaks to our hearts is an invitation to be intentional about how we spend it. The greatest use of a life, it is said, is to spend it on something that will outlast it. Pondering our time, then, is more than just filling our calendar. It's about turning things on its head. Not filling our calendar with the work and the tasks, the half-dos, and then looking at all the gaps and all the places where we haven't written something and squeezing in the things we love and that we enjoy, the things that give our lives meaning and purpose. If we turn it on its head and spend our time on the things we're passionate about, on the things that give us a real sense of value, that say, this is what I want to be in the world and where I want to spend my time in the world, then we live into that alternative spiritual economy where there really is a time and a season for everything. Because if we do what's important, the other things will follow. This poem, again, that Cindy read for us is important to read, to hear, to see again. When each day is sacred, when each hour is sacred, when each instant is sacred, earth and you, space and you, bearing the sacred through time, you'll reach the fields of light and recognize you're standing in them. Isn't that beautiful to think that we're surrounded by sacredness, we are sacredness, and all that we're searching for, we're already standing amongst. We are already in that field of light in which we search, for which we search. It's not just the greatest use of our lives to spend it on things that outlast us. It's also that we feel and act the most true to ourselves when we measure our lives not by its length, but by its depth. And so we all ask ourselves, what are the key values of my life? And how do they compare to what I'm currently spending my time on? In other words, does my use of my time align with my intentions and my purpose and my goals? And then we ask ourselves, how can I contribute to my communities in ways that support the values and principles I wish to cultivate in my life? These are just some of the questions we're asking this month, and some of the questions that some of you in your sharing in these weeks have shared with us. What is important, and how are we using our time and our resources to respond to all that's valuable? And so we continue to ponder how we use all of us to tend to this beautiful community. How we're tending to the place of nature in our lives. How we're tending to the relationships, and how we are seeing everything as love. That is the embrace of abundance, and that's our search for balance. And we won't fret, because in the search we'll find that we'll get it just right. May it be so in so many ways. I promised two folks that we'd hear from today, and we are thankful for Debbie for sharing with us from Saskatoon. And I want to invite Ben to share a story. And look, he's got a guitar, so that means he's sharing something else too. Can't wait, Ben.
Hello. Oh, good. Hello. My name is Ben Severson, I guess as Chris said. If you don't know me, I've been an infrequent member for, we were trying to do the math earlier, like 7 or 8 years, but a regular member really for the last year or so. My wife is Shelley Severson, the back with our daughter Maddie, and my daughter Lily. They were both baptized earlier this year. However, when I was asked by Chris to talk about giving back to the church and ways that we volunteer, I kind of thought, why me? I've been involved in various commitments to SSC over that time, including a hiring committee, a little bit of the branding redesign committee. I was excited to be able to play music for the first time in our service a couple of weeks ago, but I don't really feel that I've given much to the church. I suppose some of you might count bringing down the church's average age, especially via... especially via our daughters as a way of giving back. And I do want to thank you for how sweet you are to them. But I don't I didn't think that's quite what Chris was getting at. The request did make me reflect, though. And while there's still areas and other ways to give back that we can do now, a quote that I've heard before resonated with me, which is that there's a time in your life where you do a little bit more taking and a time in your life where you do a little bit more giving. Those of us who are familiar with Ecclesiastes or the birds, of course, also know there's a time to cast away stones and gather them together, but that's also a different thing. What I really mean is that we seem to be in a season where we're getting a little bit more than we're giving at SSUC. And I think part of that comes from what you can and can't do when you have very young children, but even more so, it made me want to say thank you for what we have received from SSUC so far. So among the many ways that SSUC has influenced our lives, we met our close friends, Paige and Matthew who spoke last week here. We were also trying to do the math 8 or 9 years ago at a young adult group cooking class that we had as like a young adult evening, quite a long time ago, and we were married here 5 years ago last week. Just last week. And we had our children baptized here this year. In the time in between, we've made numerous other close friends, especially young family connections that are so valuable. And in addition to all that, the church has given us a place that we both feel comfortable spiritually. I did grow up in the United Church, and I loved the youth program I participated in and eventually led, and the opportunities to play music. However, Sunday services never really truly resonated with me on a deep level. When I first came to SSUC and I heard Nancy and Chris talk about expansive spirituality, how they embrace a vision of community that was radically inclusive, and for me, not cognitively dissonant, I was blown away. In comparison, Shelley had never grown up going to any form of church and found other churches that we were in quite intense and overwhelming in their language and in a version of spirituality that she felt she didn't have access to, whereas here she felt comfortable and wanted to participate in the community. With all that said, this is a special place that I want to continue to try to give back to where I can, but mostly for right now, I want to thank the community for the way it's influenced our ways of knowing and being, our friendships, our marriage, and our daughters. And then in terms of something that I could give back, I'd been thinking when I started thinking about playing a little bit of music here, I was formerly at Riverbend United Church and I was involved in some music stuff there. And at a time I'd been asked to write like a paraphrase of the United Church's A New Creed for a commemorative service. And I was reflecting on how I really liked that song, but even at the time, like I didn't really love all of the lyrics to it. Like I felt good about what I'd done with it, but I'd been thinking about trying to do a version of that that kind of embodied the SSUC values. And so I was, going back to the website and our posters and thinking about what does that look like. And so the core idea of A New Creed, which is that we are not alone, we're together in community, we're not alone in this larger idea, is maintained, but the rest is mostly sourced from the SSUC website and the posters that are in the room. So the chorus, which hopefully you can kind of help me sing, so it's not just me singing, is really simple, and it's, we are not alone, I am not alone, you are not alone, we are not alone. I know it's incredibly clever and just, I don't know where I came up with that stuff. And then some verses, which you don't have to sing along with, because I don't know if I got them into the slides, right? They didn't quite ask for that on time, maybe. Oh, then feel free to sing along with the verses too. That's amazing. Okay, awesome. So, yeah, I guess I got to step back to this part, and let's do that. I should turn this off, right? Okay. Sorry, one sec. We are called to be together, no matter who you are. Spiritual seekers united in community. All ages and genders, are here for the sacredness. We are here for connectedness. We are here for the bond to all of life. We push for inclusivity. We embrace diversity. We aim to affirm you, whoever you are. We are not alone. I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. We care for our home, the earth. We live out our principles. Democracy, integrity, nonviolence, and peace. We are outside the ordinary. We are here to explore the truth. We celebrate the wisdom that affirms life. Life in death, in whatever comes next, we are together. In life, in death, in whatever comes next, we are together. We are not alone. I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone.
We have just sung our intentions, haven't we? Thank you, Ben. We will speak words as well and add to that, add to those words and notes and lyrics as we join together in our intentions for the week. We join together with hearts full of gratitude and eyes open to see the places of abundance in our lives. We engage our inner journeys toward hearts open to receiving and hands open to generosity. May our work and play, our time and energy, our resources and priorities be put to use toward a world of justice and belonging. Through every aspect of our lives, may we lay a foundation of responsiveness, responsibility, and rejoicing. May we work to make it so. And now we'll change the light with some words by Rabbi Sofer and Carolyn McDade. To act in fear increases fear. To act in trust increases trust.
To act in delusion increases delusion. To act in truth increases truth.
To act in conflict increases conflict. To act with integrity increases integrity.
To act in hate increases hate. To act in love increases love.
To act in despair increases despair. To act in hope increases hope. May we go, and from the heart of love, go well.
Hello. Hello, hello. We are inviting people to grab some bannock, grab some coffee, and if you're staying, come sit down. So anybody who wants a gluten-free bannock, Bernie has made the best gluten-free bannock.
Test.
We are going to start with the video, so you can watch the video as you slowly move into sitting and eating bannock.
There was 150,000 of us, our people, passed through the doors of that residential school. The teachers were mean and beat you if you didn't follow the rules. Many didn't make it home after residential school. And the ones that survived were changed forever. We were about 5 years old. We were picking up the children to go to residential school. We're loading them up on a bus, bringing them to school. It will be a long and hard road to regain the trust that was lost. What we're hoping to have that reconciliation to make our community strong. Trust is lost. Even our own people distrust each other. But we've got to build that trust and that relationship. And they got to help us. We're not begging for it, but they should honor it and wrap our people up with strong love and compassion.
It's the courageous who are willing to step forward at a time of great risk and change to say we must do something differently. Because if we want a different future, you can't repeat the past.
Reconciliation is a big, big word, but nobody's doing anything. We haven't changed the dialogue in over 100 years. We're still in the same place, and we're still listening to our elders share their stories of grief and trauma within the residential school, but we're not hearing.
This conversation is still going on in the country. There's a lot of, reconciliation is a very contested idea. And so there are still many who equate reconciliation with, if I could put it this way, peace at all costs, with just sort of Indigenous people should reconcile to, rather than us working to reconcile with.
From the time that the first apology was made in 1986, people have been saying, all right, well, we hear the apology, but in terms of accepting it, we need to see it acted out. And part of apology in the theological tradition is atonement. This is really what we're talking about. It's atoning for the sins of the past.
And I think that the idea of resistance is recognizing that reconciliation, the reconciliation journey, is not about finding the new recolonizing ways to you know, so we'll have an apology and we'll do this, you know, TRC, and we'll have all these things, and then it'll all be good, and we can feel good about, you know, good about that. It's not, reconciliation to me has never been about that. To me, it is about the idea that it is a decolonizing struggle.
Reconciliation is a hard word to swallow, but it's facing towards it. Saying sorry is not quite enough, but they have to recognize the wrong. To recognize the wrong to make it right. Recognize taking away is to provide elders to come to the schools to help the language, the culture, the song and dance, and provide it for equivalent of the years they take it away from us. And that's the start of reconciliation.
Certainly one of the biggest messages we've been hearing at the caucus group so far is about the importance of Indigenous spirituality and about the church welcoming Indigenous expressions of their relationship with God, the kind of ceremonies that are meaningful to them, use of the language, and trying to bring that together.
The church has a real social responsibility to bring us back to that, to restore that, because it makes us whole. My children can't be strong the way they are if they didn't have Indigenous spirituality, and that was taken from us, and we were lost without it. We were broken people without it. That's what Lodge, to me, is a good place to go and recenter myself, to reground myself. It's the only place that I know where I can sit inside the womb of Mother Earth and give all of those worldly things to the Lord. I can't be who I am without it. You know, I need it.
The day your government will build us a longhouse, a place where we can reside and bring back the teachings of our ancestors, grandparents, learn how to be parents, learn culture, learn our song and our dance. And that's one of the steps that they can do to take care of the spirit. Take care of the spirit of the people that are still coming.
I remember Dr. Jesse Soto's vision of seeing stars in the sky and saying, those are the Indigenous students being trained for ministry in our way to work in our communities. So in a sense, that was the call behind the establishment of Dr. Jesse Soto Resource Center. And then Francis Sandy had the same idea that all of the Indigenous communities of faith should have an Indigenous minister.
Really understanding what it means to live into the calls to the church that are going to be coming from the caretakers of our Indigenous circle. That document and the whole relationship that it envisions and calls us to, practicing that, living into that, being willing to be challenged by it, and having our structures, our ways of doing things changed because we are intentional about living out those calls. That's our next step, because that's sort of a roadmap for us into being the church we want to be. What a gift that is to our church, is that this group of Indigenous leaders and then the whole Indigenous church have worked so hard and so diligently to create a way forward for us where we can be together.
We saw that there's lots of history that was behind it. So the beginning of before the call is made, the history is cited. So remembering the first Indigenous presbytery, Keewatin, remembering the foundation of All Native Circle Conference, remembering the apology, various things like that. And then the idea of perhaps affirming this special nature of Indigenous ministry training at Dr. Jesse or Francis Sandy. That's the history, the foundation for why we're asking for something. And then the call comes, and it comes again from the UN Declaration.
The Indigenous folks in the United Church, after all our long history, have said we want to be church together, and then have done the hard work of saying, and here's how we can do that. Here's what this can look like, and invited us as a whole church to be on that journey together. I'm so humbled by that, and I'm so grateful.
Kairos moments come, and they come when they come. They're not manufactured, they just arrive. And this is a Kairos moment for Canada.
Last year, when we were in Pinawa, when the caretakers made their report to the National Aboriginal Spiritual Gathering, I was filled with emotion. I was touched by the work they had done and the wisdom they offered, and I was touched by the trust that they expressed. Trust that we are a church that yearns for this kind of transformation.
It's a moment of opportunity that God provides for us to begin to do things in a different way, to begin to build new relationships now, presently, and build a stronger future for everyone in Canada.
This is a Kairos moment. It's a Kairos moment because we have this window that's opened up in our society and in our church and on ourselves. This moment offers us an opportunity to learn, particularly as settler people, how to listen deeply, and to, in that listening, to be transformed by what we hear, by what we learn. I keep saying to people when I'm talking these days, because it's this sort of aha moment that I had recently, and it seems so obvious that it's almost embarrassing to say, but I keep being reminded and reminding folks that if we want to be different, We can't be the same.
So this is the 12th time I have watched this video, and I have seen something new every single time. It is very powerful. It is on the church, the United Church website. The United Church website is probably the best website that I've seen. It's way better than any government or even music websites. So I do want to speak to a couple of things from that video. One is you saw a lot of gatherings of Indigenous elders and Indigenous ministers from the United Church working on this, developing it, planning. They have been doing so since the early 80s, trying to build a space for the Indigenous church within the United Church. We're on that timeline. You also saw a lot of people in the church hierarchy, I mean, the moderator, general secretary, who are, Jordan called this her most important part of her term as a moderator. So one of the things that we know is that both the church, general council, congregations, and the Indigenous church have put a lot of time and effort and thought into this. And on the United Church website, if you have a question, the answer is probably there. And if you want, I'm happy to go through it with you and build, but we're making this one a short one. So there is a second very short video that Dara is going to put up in just a moment. We'll look at that, and then I would like to draw your attention to a couple of pieces, hopefully clarifying, and then answer any questions I can. Reasonable? And when I talk too much and go too deep, tell me this is short time. There will be, Tuesday morning, I will have a little longer time to speak with the women at the Tuesday Connection and any other group that wants to. Okay, next video.
Hello, my name is Sarah Stratton, and I work as a Reconciliation and Indigenous Justice Animator at the General Council Office of the United Church of Canada.
Hello, my name is Adele Halliday, and I work as the Anti-Racism and Equity Lead at the General Council Office of the United Church of Canada. We are among the General Council staff who share responsibility for answering your questions about the remit. And to date, we have received quite a few questions.
Almost all of them have come from the non-Indigenous church, and they share some commonalities. In this video, we would like to specifically address the non-Indigenous church and help to further respond to the questions that have emerged.
We have received questions on what this remit is about. The current remit question asks to remove structural barriers that will prevent the establishment of a self-determining Indigenous church within the United Church of Canada.
We have received questions about where the remit came from. The proposal that prompted the remit was sent to the 44th General Council in 2022 from the National Indigenous Council. It is NIC 01, Restructuring of the Indigenous Church. This proposal named a vision, guided by the calls to the church of the caretakers of our Indigenous circle. This vision names two parts of our church, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, working side by side. It also recommended the identification and removal of all the structural barriers to developing and sustaining an autonomous Indigenous church within the United Church of Canada.
We have received questions about why a remit process is needed to respond to the proposal. When any requested change in church structure will alter the basis of union of the Manual of the United Church of Canada, as this will, then a Category 3 remit is required. The General Secretary therefore proposed GS10, Living into Reconciliation, which asks the Church to give preemptive remit approval for whatever the Indigenous Church determines as its place in the United Church, and to eliminate the need for further remits approval.
We have also received questions about the voting process. This remit requires a vote from every regional council and each community of faith that is a pastoral charge. The vote is for the governing body, such as the church council or the board. It does not need to be a full vote of the congregation.
We have also received several questions asking exactly what the new Indigenous church will look like and how it will function. These questions have asked how it will be funded. Questions have been asked wanting to know what allows members and communities of faith to identify as part of the Indigenous church. Questions have been asked about the alignment of policy, doctrine, theology, liturgical practices, and sacraments.
Some questions have been asked about how this national Indigenous organization will be in relationship with the regions. Questions have also been asked about whether Indigenous peoples want to leave the United Church of Canada. If this remit is approved, it would not immediately create a new Indigenous church. Rather, the remit asks for the removal of barriers in order to give Indigenous people in the church the time and space they need to define their own future in relationship with the rest of the United Church.
In the meantime, the details about policy, practices, and overall function remain unknown. There are some questions, such as those of finances and many of the other issues raised, that we simply will not have the answers to until the process and the accompanying conversations take place. Even though there is uncertainty about some of these details, there is certainty and clarity about one important aspect: being in relationship.
The proposal from the National Indigenous Council clarified that asking for the removal of structural barriers did not mean that a relationship was ending. The proposal describes a long relationship between the Church and Indigenous peoples and expressed a desire to set aside the notion of mission and truly move towards being partners in God's call to all the earth. It notes the importance of a continuing conversation between the National Indigenous Council and the General Council as the new structures are formed and the relationship continues.
The National Indigenous Council will also report back to the 45th General Council in 2025 on its progress and on the next phases of work. When the United Church adopted the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a framework for reconciliation in 2016, we acknowledge that, quote, "we are not sure what lies ahead as we deepen our commitment to a new identity, a new relationship, and a new way of being," unquote. We also as church acknowledge that a new relationship is waiting, and we turn our faces towards it.
There are some things that we do not know. What we do know is that a continued, renewed relationship awaits. We hope that this video has offered helpful additional background information for you as you reflect on the remit question. You can also find the study guide for this remit, links to additional background information, links to the 2 proposals that we have named in this video, and also the voting cards on the website for the 44th General Council at www.gc44.ca.
Thank you for your participation in this important decision-making process.
Okay, now I have watched that one, I think it's about the 19th time, and it is so dense. Every single phrase has so much information that the first time you see it, it's like a wave washes over you and knocks you on the beach. So I want to try and break it down a little bit, and I want to stress, so the next one would be, this is a process in which the Indigenous Church, one of the easy ways to look at it is the advisory councils to the United Church. The Indigenous Advisory Council is saying, we want to find a way to be within the United Church. This is not an exit strategy, it is a partnership strategy. And as both videos emphasized, this is moving away from mission to the Indigenous people to a partnership with the Indigenous people. And that power balance is incredibly important. Moving away, moving away from mission to towards a partnership with. So the next. The General Council has passed the National Indigenous Proposal. And this is coming from, as I said, a long history of pieces that have come together slowly. I'll go through a timeline in a minute. But the proposal is, or the General Council said, if we're accepting this proposal, we need to direct the General Secretary to remove barriers. And that is why we need the remit. The union, the Articles of Union set down in 1925 will need small modifications because there was no partnership in 1925 with Indigenous people. And so some of those Articles of Union need to have small modifications, some significant modifications, that will allow this partnership to develop and allow an autonomous church. And all of the suggestions going forward will come from the calls to the church, which were identified and accepted by the United Church in the last General Council. So this is familiar. And the UN Declaration of Rights, I don't know how many of you worked on that so hard between 2014 and 2016, but I know that was, I was up to here in that. And so I'm very pleased to see that it's central to the whole moving forward process. Go down to the reconciliation. Yeah, so this is a question. It's posed to councils, church councils, not the whole congregation. And so if you want to have your input, speak with council. And it's, of course, due in March. So then, forward. Now, the first apology, I was not there, but very dear friends of mine were there. And they were there in about, I think it was 84, when Billy, Alberta Billy is one of the Indigenous leaders, has been involved in this from the early 80s. And she was making a presentation to General Council. She and two others had been invited from the Indigenous Church to make this presentation. And at the end of the presentation, she looked at Bob Smith, who was to be moderator, and said, "And the United Church owes the Indigenous people an apology." And the room was silent except for this gasp from Bob Smith. And he said, "Oh my God." So in the next General Council, the wording of an apology was brought forward and accepted. And then the members of General Council went down the road to where the Indigenous Circle was meeting with their sacred fire and provided the apology orally with all the rituals. And the people in the Indigenous Circle nodded and said, "We hear your apology. We acknowledge your apology. We will watch your actions." And so those actions, they've been watching and they've been walking alongside with us. Second apology in '98, and then when you look at the it was 2003, there was the Principles of Reconciliation. So the 6 principles beautifully outlined on the website. I will skip over that really exciting part. And the Aboriginal Ministries, the circle was inaugurated. It became a significant part of council. And in 2012, the United Church completely and formally rejected the doctrine of discovery. And I don't know about you, but I remember standing in a round dance when that happened. So same year, the United Church crest was changed. That is beautifully written up on the website. And in 14 to 16, 14, 15, there was the TRC, and the United Church made presentations in 14 and again in 16. And the caretakers of our Indigenous circle, the representatives from across the country, met and began to envision an Indigenous church that was a new model and was within the United Church. So that whole self-determining piece, very rich, and it became a significant part of that moving forward. UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration of, sorry, you're going to have to, Declaration of Indigenous People. Again, it was a statement made in 2008 in the United Nations that took until 1915 for the rest of the world to begin to say, yeah, we can implement that. The United Church had a full study of where the United Church stood in terms of UNDRIP, and that was part of, I'm getting too much. In any case, the declaration in 2016 that the United Church had looked at all of the policies and programs in relation to that Declaration of Human Rights was followed very soon after by the Canadian government accepting UNDRIP. And in 2017, the calls to the church, so that would be the Indigenous Circle speaking to the United Church of Canada, calling on actions from the United Church to enable a partnership to develop. And the National Indigenous Council's proposal was presented in 22, so we can look at that National Indigenous Council and the National Indigenous Elders Council, both formed, and they created a number of guides built on UNDRIP and the calls to the church. So one of the things that people have said is, but what would it look like? And I think if you go a few more slides, I've got taken directly from the, it's the one with the stars. The calls to the church had a dream or a vision. What would that church look like? And if you look at this circle, it's very familiar. Regional councils, the Office of Vocation, General Council, and there are the Indigenous elements working in that, being a part of that whole, of that United Church. And that's how the Indigenous communities of faith would fit in. And if you look at the next slide, and I'm going to give you time to look at that on the website. I do have a whole list of resources that we can give to people. So this is looking at what each of these bodies is including at the moment, and dreams for the future. So when we say we don't know what it's going to look like, we don't know. You can't predict the future. I have no idea if we're going to live on Mars in 2050, but I doubt it. And this is a dream, this is a hope. No idea if it will be what we're doing in 2030, but we can hope. So the calls to the church are the other place that we can find answers. And the calls to the church document is concrete measures that have happened and should continue to happen. So if you look at the self-determination, supporting of the vital ministries, expression of the church's adoption of UNDRIP, all of these are critical. And I sort of feel like I'm throwing words out there and you can't really see what I'm meaning. So I want to move to a couple more slides, Dara, and it's got the foundations. So the foundations of the calls to the church. The first one is that the Indigenous Church, the Indigenous Elders Council, and the Indigenous organizations will say what Indigenous ministry looks like or what it is. It will be a partnership where the training will come through the United Church training. The theology will come from the United Church studies, but it will seriously take into account the spirituality of Indigenous people, acknowledging that what happens in Nova Scotia in Indigenous spirituality is not the same as what's happening in BC in Indigenous spirituality, but neither is what is happening in Quebec United Church, what is happening in Saskatchewan's United Church, nor is Riverbend and SSUC identical. Make sense? And the idea is the Indigenous Church will say who the Indigenous Church are. So this national status, Indian status, is not going to be their basis of who's in the Indigenous Church. They get to say who their members are. They are suggesting they have to have a healing church. There needs to be that movement towards healing and reconciliation within the Indigenous Church and between the Indigenous Church and the United Church. They're looking for their roots as Indigenous people. They are stating that an important part of the Indigenous Church must be the ecological caring for the earth. That has to be central to their spirituality. And UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration. So from those foundations, there are 9 points. And when you go on the website, what the Indigenous circles have done in terms of preparing this and getting this ready is amazing. They've gone through the history of the United Church, and they have created an acknowledgement of. So in terms of, if we can do one more slide, so you've got the 9. The Office of Vocation. So you feel a call to be a minister in the United Church. You study to be a minister in the United Church. If you're also going to be in the Indigenous components of the United Church, you need to study the ideas that they've had put forward. And there should be an Indigenous supervisor alongside all of the other supervisors that you would normally have. But there needs to be an Indigenous connection. So in the first one and the second one, there are a listing of the achievements that specific colleges and specific places of study have done to include Indigenous spirituality. They've gone through and looked at what is happening now and what do we want to hold on to. What is working and what is good, and how do we continue that? So the depth you can go into, I mean, it's an 11-page statement, type. And you can recognize all of the things that you've heard about as a United Church person over the last 50 years. And you say, oh yeah, I remember. And you're seeing all these things as positives. It's uplifting. So the ministry placements would have an Indigenous component, the Indigenous spirituality in that testamur, the National Indigenous Organizations for Support and Fellowship, be an integral part of that Indigenous church within the United Church. The idea of belonging, isn't that key to every church? But belonging within the Indigenous church, belonging within the United Church, and then belonging within greater society. And that's spoken to. Consensus building. I grew up in Indigenous communities where I am settler, have to state that really clearly. But my parents were working on reserves and in Indigenous areas. And so I grew up with consensus building, and democracy seems a little bit slipshod. So sustainable support, of course, that's the financial piece. And there are what has worked in the past and suggestions for moving forward. And the sexual orientation and diversity, their statement starts, the Indigenous community has been and will continue to be centered on diversity. So when you go into the calls of action and look deep in those calls of action, a lot of the questions that were posed in that last video are addressed, not answered, addressed. So again, I say the website is fabulous, and if you want to sit down and talk, this is one of my favorite topics. And I think the I've got this PowerPoint with, and the last two slides, yeah. Dreaming the New Dream, that's the thing we saw earlier with those lovely stars. And those are very specific links, but if you go into the United Church website, into social justice, and just go from there, you'll feel really good. Questions, which I probably can't answer, but I'll try. Pat.
You actually didn't say what was in the remit. And, sorry, I'm a nitpicker here. The regional council, or our council, will be asked to agree to the amendment to the basis of union to reflect, and they've listed 3 things, and one of them doesn't agree with what you've had there. The first one is that I don't know if you've got that or not. Anyway, the first one is that the United Church of Canada will be organized as follows. Number 1, a 3-council structure consisting of communities of faith, regional councils, and denominational council. And the second, number 2, is an autonomous national Indigenous organization. And Part B, that was Part A. Part B is that once the new autonomous Indigenous organization is established at the United Church of Canada, it will have its own mechanisms to make future changes to its structure and processes, and therefore will not be subject to the remit process under Section 7.4.1 of the Basis of Union. And C, the changes required for the establishment of the autonomous National Indigenous Organization. And one of the questions that's been on my mind is, what is the relationship to the United Church? Because they are no longer part of the denominational council. But when you showed the slide, that circle slide of all the different parts of the Indigenous, they included General Council in there. Now, why is it not mentioned in the remit? It sounds like they're not going to be part of General Council. I'm wondering what the relationship is and who's going to, if there's going to be funding, going from the non-Indigenous to the Indigenous, and I would expect that it would be going through General Council. But it doesn't say that they have any relationship with the General Council, and I'm confused now that I see yours with what's written on the remit. Sorry, but
Yep. And that's a good point. What the proposal, and you can read that on the website, states is they want to be within the United Church, and they want to hold, you want to hold those components. And one of the meetings I attended, it was looking at it as Venn diagrams, where there's that intersecting piece. So can't hold this and make my circles, but think of a Venn diagram where you've got General Council, and a piece of that General Council is dealing with the Indigenous Church, right? And then you've got the Indigenous Church, is part of it is dealing with General Council, and then you've got regional councils, and the Indigenous Church is going to be across this country and going to be interacting with regional councils. And so you need all of those Venn diagrams where they're overlapping. And yes, the General Council, your number one of your statements is that there will be a General Council that will have regional and denominational, and I forget the third one, congregations, and that is very true, but some of those congregations in the congregation part will be Indigenous congregations. And in the regional area, some of that region would be Indigenous, because you're going to have congregations that are Indigenous within. That is how it was explained to me. It's overlapping, and yet a very distinct piece would be the Indigenous communities of faith. I think there's lots more to find out. Yeah. There is it Tuesday or Wednesday night? No, I'm thinking there is a speaker that's going to be Tuesday or Wednesday evening. I cannot remember which. The regional, yes. And so that will probably be another place where we can raise that question. I will be attending online. Yeah, I agree, a trust walk. Yeah. Yes, and since that within has been emphasized is very important, yeah. I think it's one of the most important words for me within a lot of these documents.
Yeah, okay. I thought I was loud enough. Hello. So what I was going to say is I have a ticket in social work, and I have found that, unfortunately, I want to put this, in a bit of a kind manner, but the bottom line is there's only so many Indigenous people that are well educated and are used to dealing with white people in their actions, just whatever their actions are. I want to say that I found, working as a social worker, there's a lot of fear in the Indigenous community and lack of trust. Like putting it down to one sentence, which is, they're going to come take my baby. You know, if you have a young Native gal who is pregnant, has a baby, it's very possible that her mind is closed. It's just like, don't you dare take my baby. We've got a history of, like, these histories are not forgotten about the car coming in, the baby's loaded, and the 2-year-old, and they're gone. And I found it extremely difficult to develop trust. And when I look at something like this, I understand it's coming from a place of goodness. This is not coming into place so that we can enslave these people. No, we're helping them and interacting with them at a certain level of intelligence. But where I'm coming from is the hesitation possibly with this structure and trying to organize things so it's just all good, right? Irregardless of our intentions, you're going to have people that are not going to trust these things, and for various reasons. And I want to throw in there as well that I have definitely run into, well, along the same thinking. There are only so many people that are good at public speaking and so on and so forth, right? What I'm concerned about is having a top-heavy way of approaching our future relations, and a top-heavy is people aren't going to, the people we're trying to reach, that might just be too much for them. They're just like, well, how far is this from the Indian Act? Well, it doesn't look to me like it is far from the Indian Act. Is this not just the same direction as the Indian Act? And I mean, we would like to think that we are all progressed to a certain place, but we may not be. I'm aware of reserves that they just don't have anybody in that reserve to run administration. So anyway, I'm just throwing out ideas. I mean, there's nothing I would like better than to have a cohesive relationship between everybody, but I don't know how realistic that is.
I think one really important factor is this is proposed by the Indigenous people, not by the settlers. Yeah. So, so it's. I think that's the key, and then I didn't say it clearly enough. That's important. No, that's really important. The Indigenous circles brought this to the United Church. Oh, awesome. Okay. So it is coming from an Indigenous viewpoint.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. We're further along than I'm giving people credit for.
Yay. Yeah. So the, yeah.
One of the things that really excites me about the remit is the part where it says we're willing to let go of authority and not ask this to be called back as the Indigenous community. An organizational structure in the United Church of Canada determines its partnering going along within. We're not going to question it. And, we're going to, we'll be in conversation. I don't mean that. And we will question, too. I'm sure there will be conversation. But we're not going to, like colonizers or or the power we've had, we're not going to say, well, we better test this out with another remit. You know, there's a new trust walk that's coming in here, which I think is the most profound piece of part of this, is it's how we're going to be in relationship. And as I was saying, I think it's a trust walk. And I'm so grateful that the Indigenous community that's been within the United Church of Canada for all these many recent years too, that they've come to this stage and inviting us to partner. Like, I think this is a pretty amazing journey.
We all need more research, yes.
But there'll be a lot of trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Good, good. And if we don't say things like that out loud, then we don't hear them. And so we need to have that questioning and the back and forth.
Yeah, like hope and positive moving forward, which will not happen if you walk into it going, oh, it's going to fail because we had the 60 scoop, blah, 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 right? And so we're coming from a place of love and understanding, and I guess it's very easy to rehash the past and say, oh, well, this is just what's going to happen. But yeah, we're coming from a place of hope and sincerity. So disregard the earlier communication.
Earlier communication is really important because it's very real. Right. Yeah, yeah. Gordon.
In terms of process, there was something that said that this decision will be made not by the congregation, but by the councils. Is there an alternative that it seems to me in past remits, I remember congregations voting on it. The word does need to go from the council, to general council, but, we're being asked to talk about it. Is there going to be a chance for a congregation to vote, and then the council will know the will of the congregation? So I'm a little confused about the process, whether one or two.
I might be able to speak to that. Last night on the website I went in, and this is a remit number 3. It's a certain category. Some remits need the vote of the congregation, and this one requires the vote of a board or council. So it's it's slightly different. Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, exactly. And it is open to each congregation. Any congregation who wants to open it to a vote of the congregation, then the council vote would be bound by that, or the council can choose to do it from the council. And so that, none of us in the United Church are really good at being square pegs in square holes. We like to mix it up a bit. I like that.
Just a question, somewhere along the way, did I hear that every board is required, or a non-response is considered negative? How does that pan out?
I just don't. Thank you. I just know that is the case, because I thought it was the reverse. I thought every congregation that didn't send in, that you would be a supportive of the motion, but no, it is if we didn't send in our decision as a board on behalf of the congregation, it would go in as a negative vote that we did not want this to pass.
No, that's very scary, and there are a number of people talking to congregations saying, have you looked at this issue? You need to look at it.
It needs to be very well publicized, that concept of a negative vote, because Margaret was saying, here's Margaret Hetherington, who follows everything, and I've had a long history in the United Church, and we had opposite opinions until we really had a look at it.
This is my question for all of us. How do we have this new relationship of partnership? And did you tell us once it was like 2 canoes in the river? Did you come up with this? this is two canoes, we're in the canoes and we're going down the same river and we're helping each other and doing things together. My worry is, how will we maintain deep, committed relationships? You know, we have to figure out autonomy, what it means, but what does it mean to be in partnership still? Like to not feel that we're just our canoe and they're just their canoe. How are we going to keep the interaction going?
So I know that there are a number of staff people working on this. Beyond that, I can't answer, but very important. I think so. It's our responsibility.
Ruth, yeah. This is really bold of me. My name is Helen Arnott, and I'm from St. Albert. And I'm really, thank you. I do feel very welcomed here. As I listen to our conversation, I have an image in my mind of a kind of a metaphor. I'm learning little bits and bobs about our relationship with Indigenous people as I go along in my own life. And at the moment, I'm within the context of our conversation, I'm thinking about my learnings of the fur traders and others in the 17 and 1800s coming to the settlers. And I'm seeing an image of two wampum belts representing treaties, I believe, where the United Church of Canada is one of the settlers representing one wampum belt, and then the Indigenous peoples wampum belt representing the treaty from the Indigenous side, and how we go forward into the future. It's a process, in my mind, as you mentioned, hand-in-hand learning from each other. And I see this, it's wonderful. Thank you for your comments, because it prompted Ruth to tell us, to affirm for us that this circle came from the Indigenous side. So I'm just envisioning these two wampum belts going forward in the future. And no, we don't have any answers, but together we will find them. Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah. Esther.
I'm troubled by understanding how Part B will play out, how it will look, or how it will work. Because it says that once the new autonomous national Indigenous organization is established within the United Church of Canada, it will have its own mechanisms to make any future changes to its structure and processes, and therefore will not be subject to the remit process. But how will we know? That is as I've been listening to all of this, I'm wondering how we will know about change, any changes they've made, and why do they want to have autonomy being totally different from or separate from, but not? I can't understand that process, or that I can't make an idea of it.
So, Pat, I was just reflecting on that earlier, and my idea is that SSUC does not ask General Council if we can state all religions or none. We do it. And did we tell anybody we do it? I don't know. But yes, there's going to be all kinds of questions going back and forth. Yeah, yeah. And there's not very many people like me who read the website front to back.
Well, I was just going to say that if General Council is actually, if we report to General Council and they report to General Council, then General Council will know some of those things. And I do think that it's important, knowing what little I do know about Indigenous groups and stuff, that we don't need to tell them, you know, we don't understand a lot of what is important. So why should, although the other way around, I think we've got a lot to learn from them too, and I don't like the separation for that reason. We have lots to learn from them, but that can come too.
Chris, sorry. Did you want to say something?
Well, just continuing on that last thought, what if, does it affect in any way if General Council wants to change its own structure? Or what if the current General Council structure, if the United Church of Canada chose to integrate even more fully in some way with the Indigenous Council? Like, are there any, can we move both? Is one way blocked and the other way isn't? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I did a little homework last night. Boy, am I glad I did make my famous notes. I think we're a little bit sidetracked here. This is the vision for all of this that came from the Indigenous community. We're not the United Church of Canada and then this autonomous Indigenous community within the United Church. The vision is two parts of the church, and one part is Indigenous and one part is non-Indigenous. So it's one United Church of Canada. If I might not be right, but and then Indigenous and non-Indigenous working side by side. That's in the notes from the remit. Yeah. So is that right?
Yeah, côte à côte. Yeah, that's one of the statements. What does it mean? Well, we'll see. Yeah. How do we walk side by side? Yeah.
I have just sort of two comments on this. The first one is that SSUC is kind of an autonomous thing within the United Church, doing our own thing. We didn't ask permission. So maybe we should be a little respectful of others who want to do their own thing. Talking about that nice image about the things that I've never heard of before, it kind of made me think of apparently redwood trees don't actually have very deep roots, and that's why you always see them in groves together. And they actually share roots. No, they don't share roots, but their roots intermingle. So each tree is part of supporting the whole. And I kind of see it as two redwoods like that. It's just my metaphor, if that's a metaphor, not a simile.
I like that one.
This is challenging, isn't it? When we're in this discussion together, I can only speak for myself. I absolutely must acknowledge that everything about me, my education, my upbringing, my outlook is of a settler. Everything. So when I ask questions about United Church structure, it comes out of this Western European lens. And that is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a group of people who have an entirely different upbringing, lens, outlook, asking for what they need out of their own experience in a way to be part of what they value. Clearly they value the United Church, or otherwise it would be a simpler solution. So at every question I ask, I have to say, am I asking this because I only know this one way? And how are there other ways of looking at this? If we change the United Church, we know how we would go about it. Step 1 through 73,000 is how we would go about it. And we have it all written down. But if someone with a different lens and a different experience wants to act and live out that experience authentically, and their process is not that, then I have to look and say, I don't share that, I don't understand it even, But that would be what, for me, it means for another person to be autonomous, to be their own person and people with their own experiences and their own way of expressing that experience. So for me, it's all bound up in a worldview that I haven't lived with. So therein is the challenge for me. By the way, I had a very similar conversation with someone recently about a women's group in our congregation and asked, why does it have to be a women's group? And the answers were surprisingly similar about expressing one's own experience of life in the world with people who understand that experience. Is it so different?
Nope.
I love it.
How would you include the Métis people with this? Are you ignoring the Métis? Okay, so the Métis are included in this whole plan and vision and so on and so forth. Okay, because they have a very strong voice of their own, so I was just wondering if connection had been made.
First Nations, so Indigenous Church includes First Nations, Métis, and Inuit. Yeah, and there's a lot of work back and forth between the United Church and the Australian Church and the Aboriginal issues that are ongoing in Australia and the ongoing issues here. And so that work back and forth is expanding the idea of Indigenous even wider. Yeah. On the website, there's a really good video of the Aboriginal discussion between United Church and the Australian group that came.